Hi everybody, my name is Dmitry Dain. I am advisor to World Wi-Fi, as many of you know, and we are getting ready to start our live stream on YouTube and Facebook. Welcome everyone who is watching. We are very excited. As you guys know, we have a ton of really big news coming out today. So I got really lucky with the live stream. I have something to talk about. So roughly what we want to discuss, obviously we want to answer everyone's questions. That's so our number one. We'll take a look at my background, why I'm here, why I was excited about World Wi-Fi back 6-7 months ago when we were just getting started. And we certainly want to talk about exciting news that we've had today and really over the last few days and what's coming for us. And we'll discuss the technology behind World Wi-Fi and kind of talk to you about all the things that are coming from us and generally how the technology is improving, and of course answer your questions. So let's get started. I think this is going to be great. Looking forward to your questions over the next half an hour, 40 minutes, and let's do this. So my name is Dmitry Dain. I've joined World Wi-Fi back 6-7 months ago as an advisor to really help them flesh out the story, the technology behind it. To me, this was extremely exciting project. I generally avoided all the ICOs, and we'll delve a little bit into my background. I've been with inside the ICO industry and the Bitcoin industry for a very long time. A huge supporter, have invested a ton. But generally avoided supporting or being an advisor to another startup until I met World Wi-Fi. And really the reason behind that is I worked, my first job really was in Wi-Fi. It was before Wi-Fi was called Wi-Fi. It was at Lucent Technologies and at Bell Labs. And I was 18 years old and I got started my first job, and we were working on this exciting new thing called 8211, and a small company we were helping do this for, who was buying the technology from us, was called Apple. At the time they were nearly bankrupt, and they were just about to release their first products since Steve Jobs came out of, let's call it enforced retirement, out of Apple Airport. And I was one of 6 people who were working on that project, and generally we built it and it took off. Today, every one of you knows what Wi-Fi is. At the time, obviously nobody knew, and that was extremely exciting to work on. And really that kind of built up my entire career. I've been working with a number of Wi-Fi and radio companies for more than a decade. Kind of moved off of Wi-Fi over the last 6-7 years, and specifically to get into security and cryptography and encryption. But generally Wi-Fi, that was something I started with. So that was always great to see companies trying to take the technology to the next level. And that's to me what World Wi-Fi is trying to do. Combining the power of Wi-Fi and the connectivity that gives people with the power of distributed networking and enabling low-cost access throughout the world is really powerful. This is something we haven't seen and really builds on the entire story of Wi-Fi. So I thought it was a great idea back 6-7 months ago, and it was really exciting to watch this team pull it all together. They really did a great job pulling the story, kind of the outline of what they wanted to do. They already had the back end and the infrastructure to build this, so they were able to move really, really fast. But they generally understood what it is that we are trying to achieve, and that is give connectivity to people that either can't afford it, don't have it, or it allows them to make money on the infrastructure they've already built for themselves. And that is really powerful. This is one of the use cases behind blockchain, behind Wi-Fi in general, that is exciting. You guys are seeing the excitement that 5G technology gives people, and everyone is investing into it. And really, it doesn't necessarily have to be deployed all over the world, and it will not be. And it's simply too expensive. Some countries will do it, but allowing Wi-Fi to go into the places and monetizing it in many places is the way to go. It's inexpensive, it's easy to set up, We're going to make it very, very easy to set up for you to make money on. And of course, behind the, having distributed networking behind it using the blockchain, it allows us to connect all these disparate networks that are deployed out there. Today, the networks, they're there. We know they're there because there are hundreds of millions of Wi-Fi routers out there, but they're not connected in any meaningful way. And to us, that's the power behind World Wi-Fi. This is what these guys are trying to build. This is what long-term, the value behind what they're working on. So I'm very, very excited about that. Just a few more words. I am the founder of a security startup called Virgil Security. We're based in the United States, in Northern Virginia, and we provide developers and anyone who does software development, IoT devices in particular, easy to use encryption, security protection, key management, all the things you need, generally everything you need to build a secure device or secure app. So that's kind of my area of expertise over the last little while. Like I've mentioned in the description, I was the subject matter expert to United States Treasury and later Goldman Sachs on Bitcoin security in particular, and this was many years ago. Now it's nearly 5, 6 years ago or so. And that's public information. You can guys look it up. We're going to start with some of the questions, and that will take us into some of the things I wanted to talk about. So let's talk about first what is my previous experience and how is it applicable here? And I really tried to answer that already kind of in my intro. We certainly want to make it secure, and behind every blockchain there is a lot of cryptography, so you have to understand that. But here we have an additional complexity, which is a bunch of IoT devices. And we know that IoT devices today are generally not very secure, and most companies who build them struggle to build them properly. So that's my expertise to help them do that, and that's one of the reasons why I'm working with World Wi-Fi. So we certainly understand that today's Wi-Fi router is not the kind of router you're going to buy a year or even 2 years from now, and we are excited to shape that future. So at World Wi-Fi, we want to shape how those routers behave. We want to certainly have our software running on them, and we want to enforce certain security standards on the router manufacturers to help them build secure devices. So that's the exciting part for me. This is what I'm planning to do here. So the rollout schedule, a lot of you asking about the rollout schedule and when it's going to be available. It's posted on our website, so look for the updates there. Today we can talk about that it's imminent. We are discussing potentially June release, public release of at least the initial version of the software. But as I've been kind of giving you hints, there is a much bigger story behind World Wi-Fi. And that's why I got excited. It's not about building a piece of router software, putting on a particular router and saying, hey, this can serve ads. That really was the beginning. It really is the beginning, and for every company, there has to be a beginning. We want to build a company, a distributed networking company that provides connectivity all over the world via the infrastructure that's already deployed. And that's a much bigger story. That's a much bigger opportunity for all of us here, and it's a much bigger opportunity for all of you. What we don't want to do is we don't want our big telcos around the world kind of dictating exactly how you get access and exactly what are the rules are. Distributed networking gives us the power to do this using the infrastructure that is already there. So that's our long-term goal, and this is why it's kind of exciting to me to work with the team here. We're going to talk a lot, and you guys will see that, about Southeast Asia. Particularly, the question is about Indonesia. Is there World Wi-Fi there? Our goal, and we kind of discovered this early on, in some countries, infrastructure already exists and most people can afford the best infrastructure. And certainly in the United States, you're not going to see World Wi-Fi for a while. And the reason for that is it's completely acceptable to buy an LTE device, regular LTE cellular. It's available in 99.9% of areas in the United States. Costs $50 a month, and you're done. World Wi-Fi is not for that. It's not for that market. We have the entirety of the rest of the planet to kind of work with. And it certainly is, especially for me, I live in the United States, I've been living in the US for 20 years, and to travel from the United States to even Western Europe, when you show up in Western Europe and you discover the difference in the connectivity there, it's frankly amazing. You're talking about countries that are generally considered developed countries, and from income perspective, they're very similar. But in the United States, connectivity is just head and shoulders. I mean, what you get there is beyond what anywhere in Europe you're going to get. And it's also at scale. So it's the entire continent, the entire North American continent is covered by LTE. And that's been a story over the last 6, 7, 8 years as LTE has been rolled out. So in Western Europe, there is more traction for us. But again, you're still going to get LTE in most countries. It's still going to be available, and most people will be able to afford it. But as you move into Eastern Europe, as you go into Central Asia, into East Asia in particular, you're talking about the mass majority of world's population without easy-to-use without any connectivity, certainly without easy-to-use connectivity, and to a lot of them, connectivity is really done in a very, let's call it bastardized way. A lot of people in Africa think that they use Facebook. They don't have internet. If you ask them, do you have access to the internet, they tell you, I don't have internet, I have Facebook. And generally, we want to enable connectivity to them to the real internet. They shouldn't be thinking about internet as Facebook. And over the last few weeks, actually over the last few months, a lot of the things we knew in the industry in terms of all the privacy concerns, all the data collection concerns that are kind of preeminent in Facebook, now you're discovering them. Now we're seeing Facebook really is struggling with their business model. At World Wi-Fi, we generally, from day one, we knew that we enable lots of other apps, and we will partner with lots of other apps and the telecoms to provide connectivity in areas of the world that have never seen it. And that's billions of people. It's a massive market, and it's also the fastest growing market in the world. This is where you have an opportunity to build something new, which is by definition anything we're talking about here is brand new. It's built from scratch. It's built on top of blockchain, which is new and exciting. It's built on top of Wi-Fi, which to a lot of people there is new and they're just getting it. And certainly Wi-Fi at the kind of speeds we're talking about is brand new to them. And allowing people to go beyond just, hey, my internet is Facebook and that is it. Allowing them to see the wealth of different applications out there. And we really want that to happen. We want them to get out of a mode where my bank is my Google phone over SMS, and my internet is my Facebook. And we think we can empower that. And we can do that in East Asia, we can do that in Africa. We can do in a lot of these countries that are growing fast, they need this connectivity, and the connectivity will allow them to grow faster. And we know that because we've done this in the United States, in Western Europe, in a lot of countries in Eastern Europe and Central Europe as well. So connectivity allows new economies to kind of spring up, new apps to be built. I work actually quite a bit in Africa, specifically in Nigeria, where there are a lot of exciting startups are coming out there. And seeing those startups having the big market that they have there now connected to the internet, it's a huge opportunity. So we'll definitely be there. So there was a question about, hey, are you guys going to do something in Morocco? Are you going to do something in Indonesia? It's a long answer, but the real answer is absolutely. Those are our core markets. Those are our core values. This is what drives World Wi-Fi. This is what's behind this entire idea. So we want to definitely drive it. Next question we have. Why can't the guest user hack the home router owner? And that's really about the security. It's about building that protection. We will do as good of a job as you can with the existing routers. But the plan for us going forward, and this is very important, is to really work with the router companies to help them to establish the standards for them to add proper security to their IoT devices. If we don't do it, we know that they wouldn't do it. Somebody has to. Somebody who drives the network itself, in this case World Wi-Fi, we can set the requirements for them. Hey, if you want to be able to advertise that World Wi-Fi can run on your router, you need to adhere to certain standards, and we will generally provide that. There isn't anything new or particularly kind of hard to do for these vendors. They generally know that how to do this. It's just no one asks them. And I've run this not just in Wi-Fi industry, but generally in any IoT industry out there. Users don't ask for security, very rarely. Certainly they don't pay for it. And this is a very important distinction. Users don't pay for it. It has to be done, users expect it, but they don't pay for it. So as we establish the expectation of security, as we establish the expectation of privacy, which we just talked about about Facebook, that allows us to easier go to these vendors and get what we need and get the infrastructure that we need. So yes, this is a big challenge for us. This is kind of one of the main things we're working on in terms of the software and how to protect the platform, because we are actually quite sophisticated. This is not just another coin. We have IoT devices from a bunch of vendors being connected to our network. So to us, this is not a simple problem, and one of the reasons why I'm here. Timing of the advertisement shows up, is it every time you connect? Certainly that's what we'll start with. And this is, some of you have seen this at the airports if you travel a lot. You probably know that the dreaded airport Wi-Fi, which most of the time barely works. And hey, you have to get an SMS. Hey, you have to establish an identity in a lot of places, especially in Eastern Europe and Western Europe now too. We want to make that process frictionless. And we really think blockchain will allow us to do kind of identity easier. We know we can, and we know we can do it in a way that's private, protects your privacy, and it's secure. So in other words, not Facebook Connect. We want to give you that infrastructure. So first thing, you'll see the advertisements. It will look pretty much similar to what you get today. As we develop our mobile app, as we develop more routers around the world that support our technology, it will become a seamless process where generally you wouldn't have to do anything on your phone. You wouldn't have to click those annoying buttons. It will just log in. Now, how does whoever provides the infrastructure get paid? Well, advertisements were always the first step, right? So there will definitely be paid service going forward at some point. So that's it will become a revenue share agreement if you have a premium service of some sort. But advertisements today will work as frictionless as we can possibly make them. They will just show up as you log in. They will be unobtrusive generally. And they will be hopefully, and this is actually one of the big thing for us. We want advertisements to matter to you. We want them to be relevant. And generally, why would they be relevant? Because we roughly understand where you are. So we want those advertisements to be relevant to you without actually disclosing your location. So we will. That's one of the exciting things about World Wi-Fi is about enabling local advertisement. Enabling that local business where you're connecting over your Wi-Fi to potentially give you a coupon of some sort. There's certainly lots of use cases. But we want one of the core values to us is make it unobtrusive, give people connectivity, and generally that will drive our growth and it will make us successful and give something of value back to our users. What I think, so we'll talk a little bit, we'll delve tiny bit into crypto itself, because why not? So we have a question here coming in, what do I think about stable coins? It's a good question. I think that stable coins are coming, right? So we'll definitely have stable coins. They've already been with us for a while, especially if you guys know there are coins backed by gold, by potentially other metals. Will they drive the market itself? Absolutely they will. Do they solve a particular problem in the market? Absolutely, they reduce volatility. But I myself, I'm not particularly scared of volatility, and that comes sort of, I guess, where you grow up. I'm a child of a dot-com crash in the United States. The massive growth of the internet at the time when a lot of people around the world did not believe it, and a lot of people, pretty much everyone outside the United States. Let's be somewhat unfair and generalist about it. But a lot of people didn't believe, didn't invest. And that's allowed Silicon Valley to kind of grow up. But it grew up via a substantial volatility. A lot of companies went under. A lot of them were not necessarily solving a problem that people needed to be solved. But at the same time, we got Amazon out of it, Google out of it, Facebook out of it, in many ways Apple out of it. Apple, Facebook, and Google are located just a few tens of kilometers from each other. They're all local. They're all in the same spot. There is a reason for it. They were able to take risks. So I think a lot of the stable coins are attractive to people who generally don't want to do investments, and they don't want to see the growth, and they don't want to enable growth. They want safety. There is nothing wrong with that. That is absolutely necessary in this market, but it is not what makes me excited by any means. So stable coins, great, necessary, will happen all over the world. We need them. Is it something that makes me excited? Absolutely not. Those are not generally the people and the technology that will allow guys, World Wi-Fi and a bunch of other ICOs out there to take risks, right? And without taking a risk, there is no reward. It's a fundamental right. As this entire crypto community and crypto economy grows, we need to make sure that we are still able to take risks. If we do not, or don't have the infrastructure for that, for whatever reason, be that regulatory, or there are stable coins and everyone dumped their money into stable coins, it becomes a lot less exciting. You'll see fewer technologies, it will become old and stale. So generally, stable coins are happening. I'm a supporter. It will definitely drive institutional funding into the crypto economy, and we need that. Rising tide raises all ships. Maybe it shouldn't, and certainly the last 6 months have been great, by the way. We definitely need, as you guys, as I mentioned in the beginning of the broadcast, we've had kind of a few cycles where Bitcoin went up, Ethereum went up, and they went down, and companies struggled. That's important. We need to weed out weaker companies. So we've had a few cycles of that. That's important that keeps happening. So stable coins, good, will happen, but these cycles are important too. They weed out bad ideas and allow us to focus our capital on good ideas, on something that is profitable, that can make money over the long term and should exist over the long term. So we talked about, so how do we participate in World Wi-Fi? Well, I think a lot of you know how now. Generally, I think we will be done with the ICO here in the next few days, maybe a week or so. So that's it's almost over. After that, there will be exchanges. The technology will obviously be out in June. So you'll be able to participate with your Wi-Fi router. Important, I guess, point is that anyone will be able to do it, even if it doesn't necessarily make sense for you, or you don't have the foot traffic or people connecting. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. You can still try it out. And as we connect these tens of thousands and eventually hundreds of thousands and millions of Wi-Fi routers together, the value of doing that will become more apparent. It will be, I think it will be exciting to a lot of you. And some of you will participate just because of the benefits you'll get on other people's routers. And I think that's coming too. And it's not going to happen in June, but it will happen later in the year. And I'm sure we'll have the programs that kind of incentivize you to join. Not just monetary, but you may be getting perks because, hey, you can now go to a different airport where you actually do need Wi-Fi and be able to log in easier because you are participating with your Wi-Fi router somewhere else. So those are the kind of things we want to enable. Those are the kind of sharing we want to enable. So there is a story here about sharing resources and the sharing economy. Is it a big story? We'll find out. We will build infrastructure and allow people to do that. And kind of that's the point. This is what we're doing here. And we'll see. So let's see. So what are the strong merits with good LTE connectivity? I mean, a lot of you guys are coming, you're probably based in South Korea or United States or Western Europe. To you, the story is slightly different. You definitely have people coming into your country that are tourists, right? In New York, we have 21 million people a year that come. and to a lot of businesses there, those people come, the only way for them to connect economically is over Wi-Fi. And that's where the traction will happen. If those are the people who can connect easier, that's great. We want to enable that. Very, very few people in the world have global roaming. We do have it in the United States. T-Mobile provides us global roaming for free. It sucks. It's inexpensive because it's free for anyone on a T-Mobile subscription plan, but it's 2G speeds. So even if you have great LTE and it's local, you yourself where you live, you still get it. As soon as you travel or as soon as other people come to you, you need to give them an ability to connect. And we know that if people connect, they stay longer. This is a business case for Starbucks. Starbucks is a global company, fabulously profitable, because they allowed customers to loiter, to stay inside their stores. And they did that by giving them convenient spaces, kind of open design, and giving them fast internet. If you're a business and you want people to stay and spend money and keep coming back, those are the things you need to provide. And we know that works. We have business case upon business case. Just, you know, a lot of stores and a lot of places around, especially Eastern Europe and Asia, they generally don't understand that. Wi-Fi, sometimes it's available, sometimes it's hard to join. They're not making it simple to use. Starbucks Wi-Fi in the United States is great, by the way. Really fast, simple to use. And that's why people keep coming back. Even if they don't necessarily need it. Even if they just want really, really fast internet, and most of the time it's much faster than LTE, so it drives their business. So from a world Wi-Fi perspective, even if you have a great LTE coverage as a consumer, we will still see world Wi-Fi in areas that are somewhat unexpected to because of the tourists. So let's see, I mean, how would Wi-Fi, world Wi-Fi appeal project to the people living in developed country? Well, it's the same really question, but that I just really answered. So in a developed country, you still have tourists from other people. In fact, you have a lot of them because you live in a developed country. So the more you have, that's the way. But even if you have a developed country, like in the United States, why is every Starbucks location in the country have a really fast internet? And the reason is clear. They want people to come, join, and they want them to stay. They don't want them to leave. Even if they buy very little, even if they buy just a little bit, because they know they'll come back more often. And if you run a retail business, I don't know how much we'll want to discuss that here, but we'll touch upon it. The most expensive thing for a retail business is to get somebody to walk in through the doors. That is by far the most expensive thing they have. How do you get a customer to walk in through the doors? That's why you have sales. That's why you have all the promotions they do. How do you get to walk in? And we found that in the US, that if you provide fast internet, Wi-Fi internet, people stay. They stay longer and they use it. And the companies who focus on that, who know that drives the value for their customer, they're rewarded for it, right? You buy that $5 coffee that costs 30 cents or 40 cents in base, but you're happy. And the reason why you're happy because they gave you great experience. So ultimately what World Wi-Fi wants to enable is a lot of the businesses that simply can't afford to get the level of frictionless connectivity that is enabled by LTE and by Wi-Fi the way Starbucks has done it in the US, give it to them. There's no reason why every business around the world can't have that, and we will give it to them. We will give it to them economically. Will World Wi-Fi work with routers supplied by Comcast? Comcast, the quick answer is not until we partner with them. There is a reason for them to partner with us, and Comcast is a great example of a company that's thinking forward. As you know, your Comcast router already gives other Comcast customers an ability to join, even though they're not they're not inside your home. So if you're driving by the street, you see those Comcast routers online, and you happen to be a Comcast customer, you can get Wi-Fi. So generally the answer is early on, probably not. No, actually, definitely not. Comcast wants to control their network, and as well as they should. But you will see it with tier 1 manufacturers. So all those Linksys, Netgear, D-Link, ASUS especially, who will partner with them, sure. And probably it's preview of a little bit too much. we definitely will have those tier one manufacturers working. And then it's just business relationships. So we need to get Comcast, we will, but they're not necessarily our focus. We would rather have a telco in Indonesia or Morocco working with us in enabling this. It also it's a great story for them as well, because it drives more installs. It drives more installs of internet inside retail stores who generally can afford it. They just don't have a business case behind it. Why would they have a really fast internet in every single retail store or kiosk? Now they have a reason. And frictionless connectivity for our customers is a great kind of value. So enabling that. So Comcast probably, we sometimes call it a degenerative use case. Not in a bad way, but it's not the intent. We certainly would try to partner with them, but I think somebody like Comcast being extremely local, even in the United States, as you know, Comcast is not everywhere. They end with the move away from providing connectivity. Comcast doesn't want to be a telco. They want to be something like Disney, more of a content creator, and certainly competing with or being frenemies with Netflix. Comcast just made a deal with Netflix for the content. That's where they're going, and I think Comcast is just a bad example. There were millions of other opportunities for us, especially with tier one router makers and other telcos. You're welcome. And all right, so we have a few more questions to go over, and then we'll talk about maybe the future of how we're looking at world Wi-Fi in general. So timing for the services and launch for each area. So the focus really for us is Asia, Africa, growing economies. It doesn't necessarily mean we will shy away from places that have a lot of tourist traffic. So we will kind of roll out programs for a lot in areas that are frequented by the tourists and the business community in general. So it doesn't mean that we will not be in the United States, but we may only be in San Francisco, LA, New York, not necessarily target blanket city coverage, but we'll want to partner with a lot of the businesses where tourists tend to go. But not going inside the country. Telcos give you great connectivity in the United States. If you talk about Europe, same idea in Western Europe. That's not the focus early. We will go to some of the touristy areas. That's sort of the business we want to target early on. Even with how much money we have so far, it's very important for a startup like this. And obviously, you guys probably figured out I've been part of startups. I have my own startups before, have had startups, and have a startup. And I've also been part of extremely successful companies where we took 8211 at the time out of nothing, literally nothing. We sold a few thousand chipsets a month to selling millions a month within a very short period of time. But focusing is important. We don't have the resources go global right away, so that will be staged. It will be staged in a way that makes sense to us from the usability perspective and from the feedback we're getting from our users. And it's very important to focus. You cannot do global rollouts or promise people, you always, especially when you raise money, you always want to promise the world. You want to do this in stages, and you want to be extremely focused and prove out your business models in places that are most hospitable to your company early. As we figure that out, and we know what countries are most hospitable to us, and it's definitely, you've seen the focus on Asia for us. We will do more Africa for sure. As that gets proven out, then you can go to places that narrow markets, right? In Western Europe and the United States, it's narrower markets. We did an event in UK, and a lot of people walk in and say, hey, I don't need this, I got LTE, it works. Well, it's not really for you. And at the same time, a lot of the people who travel a lot to other countries, they said, I need this. And I don't need it in UK, but I need it everywhere else. So figuring that out, getting those use cases, focusing on the use cases we know work, scaling them, proving out technology, those are the early things we do in the first year. And the countries are outlined in our roadmap, and that's the logic behind it. Our logic did not start there. And by the way, it's true for most startups. It wasn't a true pivot. You know, you're supposed to pivot at least a few times when you run a startup, but it wasn't a pivot. It was a realization that we thought that our investors and our customers live in Western Europe and the United States, and that was not true. And it's great. It's to the credit of the team here. We realized that people don't get the story there. They don't have the need. But every time we pitch in places that need this, we get great response. So that kind of focus on those, on the roadmap and how we roll out is focused on where we've got the best feedback and the best understanding of why the people would do this and the value we bring to them. And the value in the US is just not as much. And there's nothing wrong with that. The world, not just big, outside the US, the growth is much faster. So going there is where we can kind of ride the lightning, if you will, right? This is where the growth is. So that's where we will be. All right. And you guys keep asking, especially in the YouTube chat. I can see you there. If you have any other questions about the US, Western Europe rollout, and this is, Western Europe is a little different. I think we'll be in Western Europe faster, primarily because of guys like Vodafone. Vodafone's CEO is infamous. Well, he thinks he's probably famous, but he's infamous in the industry for saying that people in Europe don't need LTE. 3G is plenty fast. Why would you need LTE? So as a result, you don't have LTE in a lot of places, and Vodafone is obviously one of the largest telcos in Europe, and one of the biggest in terms of customers and the coverage. Their story on 5G doesn't exist, and we'll delve a little bit into technology. 5G story as it exists today, let's talk about what 5G really means and kind of in terms of what it brings. So 5G will not exist by itself. It will always rely on the fact that we have LTE as a backup for when you're outside the coverage area for 5G. 5G, especially millimeter wave 5G, cannot work at long distances, and it's just physics. When somebody promises you 5G at 10 miles, what they really mean is that there will be two focused antennas, narrow beam antennas looking at each other. It's not a smartphone use case. In a smartphone use case, you need 5G for places like Seoul and New York and Tokyo, because even LTE, and even with the sector antennas and lots of sector antennas, even more sector antennas, they are running out of spectrum. And as you guys know, I did a lot in kind of spectrum occupancy and how to make it more available. There is no magic bullet for it. There is a lot of spectrum available. We cannot free it up. Wherever we can, we have. And you got LTE, and especially in countries that allow former TV bands to be used for LTE, you get great LTE coverage. It works inside your house. It works inside your office. But millimeter wave works differently. It does not penetrate walls at all. It certainly does not penetrate modern office buildings that have most of it is copper, or it's a mix of copper and silver on the windows. So it reflects millimeter wave just like it reflects sunlight, not just, but similarly. So you have a massive attenuation. There is very hard for you to get in. So inside your buildings, Wi-Fi is not going away. In fact, Wi-Fi will become a more prevalent form of connectivity inside the building. The trick is to allow you to join the Wi-Fi networks in a way that is seamless. And that's what 5G is going to solve. What it's really going to say is like, hey, there will be a lot of these access points in high urban environments that don't work very far. They're effectively Wi-Fi access points, but they're built to the telco standard, and they're probably weatherized, and the telco owns them, and they paid for them. And that's 5G for you. So you will see it working on 200-300 meters, which is not unlike Wi-Fi. You will get speeds that you're getting at Wi-Fi out of Wi-Fi today. There is no magic bullet. It's all about the frequency modulation and the waveform. We know it's going to be the same waveform for everybody. It's going to be OFDM by and large. We know what modulation they're going to use. It's going to be QAM. So that's a little bit it's very technical. But from a investor perspective, from somebody who's using it, what it really means is that 5G wants to do what World Wi-Fi is doing, and it will in some places. What World Wi-Fi wants to do is remove the friction of connectivity on existing Wi-Fi infrastructure, and that will give you effectively what you're getting out of 5G. 5G, millimeter wave 5G especially, it's designed to be like hotspots. It's going to be very fast in a few places. They will quote you these massive speeds, but they will achieve those speeds by essentially rigging up Wi-Fi access points with better antennas. And that brings me to antennas. World Wi-Fi understands what they're doing and understands kind of the roadmap and how they're going to get there. I think it's expensive and they will not get there. And I think LTE, I will use the word again, it was too expensive, is too expensive for most places. So you see less coverage. And how do we solve it in 5G, which is even more expensive? It's massively more expensive than LTE in every way. So how do we get it to places that need it today, but will not realistically get it for another 10 years? And World Wi-Fi is how, right? We have inexpensive way to get fast connectivity to places that doesn't necessarily work very far. So for urban environments, it works well. In New York, there was a great attempt to doing this called Link NYC for a variety of, honestly, mismanagement reasons. Link NYC they were providing every few blocks of the city, you had this access point. It was part of the Smart Cities initiative where anyone could connect to the Wi-Fi, and people abused it and they turned them off. Now, that is not necessarily how you want to react. It's just in New York, they quickly figured out that the risk was bigger than the reward. Everyone could get connectivity anyway. They could go to Starbucks and get the same thing, and there's a Starbucks every other block anyway. Moving on. That is not the case in most other places, and it still needs to be solved. So in a way, 5G will compete with World Wi-Fi. 5G will compete with Wi-Fi because it encroaches into the Wi-Fi territory, especially if you go into 5 and 6 gigahertz bands. It will not work a lot better. If it will be way too expensive. So it will be expensive. So countries that already have great connectivity will get even better connectivity, while countries that are lagging will continue to lag. So we want to solve that. Quick answer in the Federated States of Micronesia, yes. Anywhere there is internet, you will be able to use World Wi-Fi. And it will automatically connect to the world network. So it's distributed networking at its finest. So everywhere there is internet, you should be able to get World Wi-Fi going. That's our goal, and I'm sure we'll get there. There will be some localities that have interesting items like, hey, you have to provide your identity information, so we will help you get through that. So there will be some countries that are a little harder than others. But by and large, either via partnering with somebody in that country or just giving you the software you need, it will work. So in terms of 5G and kind of our goal behind 5G, we want to give this really fast connectivity to as many people as we can. We think if you can do a lot, you can do 95% of the use cases just with Wi-Fi. You don't need to deploy 5G. It will be the big story for the telco industry going forward, for the smartphone industry, because that's the reason for a lot of people to upgrade. That is, but in terms of providing connectivity to people who are underserved today, it will not. It will be delaying things, if anything. LTE will probably stay expensive for a little while longer, so it will be harder to deploy because LTE is not going away. 600-700 megahertz, which are formerly TV bands in the United States and in some parts of Europe, that LTE will stay. And the reason why it will stay, because otherwise you don't get connectivity inside your home. 5-6 gigahertz does not penetrate walls. If you want to try it out in your house, you can buy a 5 gigahertz router today and see the distance. And it really does not provide sufficient distance. But that is what you need for high speeds. You need those higher frequencies because there isn't enough bandwidth at the lower frequencies. They're just not available. And it's very hard to build RF chains or radio frequency chains at lower frequencies, at smaller sizes, that work fast. So LTE is not going away. It will be jointly used together with 5G. 5G will go at the higher frequency, starting probably at around 2.1, 2.2, which are one of the reasons we just saw T-Mobile and Sprint join forces. One of the big reasons for that, and very few people kind of understand kind of why would those two companies suddenly want to join together? And the story is behind 5G. Sprint has 2.1 to 2.2 frequencies, gigahertz bands available in the United States, and they own them. So no one, but they don't have the money to roll out 5G. T-Mobile has the capital and the customers who need this, but don't have the spectrum. And the spectrum is a finite resource. Once you own it, you own it. You're not giving it up. So connecting and better utilizing the unlicensed bands, which is where Wi-Fi works, if we're able to utilize those bands more effectively and kind of rig them together in a global network, distributed network, we actually get something of a huge value. We don't have to go buy spectrum, and we're utilizing the resources that are available to us in a much more efficient way. And that's the sharing economy story. It's just, in this particular sense, we're not sharing a particular asset you have. You're sharing spectrum, and then you're sharing your customers that are rolling through. That's a big story, actually. That sharing of spectrum is massive, right? And I'm a little biased, obviously, but more effectively utilizing the spectrum we already have unlicensed is a big deal. And most of it is still kind of empty. We can use it more effectively, and to roll out these really high-speed networks that don't necessarily work far, but were just far enough. And then you get picked up by either 3G or LTE, then it gives a lot of value. A lot of value to our customers, and it doesn't require that much capital to still give value to people in terms of connectivity. You can't build a digital economy without high-speed network access. You just can't. It's impossible, no way to do it, so that becomes your starting point. But a lot of countries, it becomes their ending as well, because they immediately say, hey, I need money from the government, hey, I need to go build this out, give me tax credits, give me something like that. That becomes a kind of target for corruption right away, and everything slows down. So a lot of it is not even kind of in terms of the risks there are not necessarily just technical. So when we build world Wi-Fi and we utilize unlicensed bands, we utilize the massive infrastructure that already exists, and we connect it together, we've sidestepped a lot of those risks and still give people connectivity. So that's, I think that's important. It's important, and this is why the traction we're seeing in some of the places, especially in the grassroots level. And by the way, there are 15,000 of you who contributed to this, to our project so far. I think that speaks a lot to the pain people experience and their understanding of the market. It isn't just a few really large individuals or investment vehicles. We're talking about 15,000 people who see the value behind this. That's actually a bigger deal. If you're an investor, especially in the United States, you always look for traction for the project. And when you have 15,000 people participating in this project already, I think that tells you a lot about us and the use case and what we solve for people. So it certainly helps. And thank you very much, by the way, all of you who contributed so far. We will do great things with this, and we look forward to really kind of releasing this to the world and solving this big problem, and more effectively using the infrastructure we already have, or we can deploy inexpensively. Deploying even 10,000 Wi-Fi router is actually inexpensive compared to doing the same thing with LTE. And certainly when you talk about spectrum, this is unsolvable problem, because in the US, there will be three once the T-Mobile and Sprint merger happens, 3 telcos that own all the spectrum. They control mobile access for the entire country, except one item, except one place, Wi-Fi. That's where they have no say. They have to play by the common rules. And certainly they have no incentive to kind of help somebody like us become big. And that's why we're seeing the grassroots kind of really understanding what the problem we're trying to solve, and sort of bigger players being scared of it. That's the story we'll see. I've seen it before, by the way, when I was working on dynamic spectrum access. We really removed a lot of value out of spectrum by allowing more spectrum to come to the auctions. And that was scary to people. They lost a lot of money that they thought they had out of nothing, because you literally just owned airwaves. Same story in most countries. Any countries, Eastern Europe, Asia, if you open up how the spectrum allocations work, that is who of corruption in that country typically. It's probably a telco, but how they got that spectrum, it's painful. Wi-Fi doesn't have that problem. As 5 GHz Wi-Fi doesn't have that problem, and certainly as we get more Wi-Fi bands opened up in 5 GHz, we're directly competing with 5G, with that glorious new technology that everyone wants to deploy at a massive cost. We're competing with them directly. We just have to connect our Wi-Fi routers properly and have some network that kind of governs the entire, has the rules for the network. So that's what World Wi-Fi is trying to do. Any big news? Well, I think the biggest news is we're nearing a hard cap, which will happen here shortly, soon. The biggest news today, I think we just jumped. We have bigger guys starting to believe. So we were about 17.4 million a couple of days ago. We're at 22 now and growing. We got a few big investments coming in, rolling in the last few days. So hard cap is coming soon. We're generally, it's happening. It's imminent. We're all excited about it, but the team, and this is to an extent, obviously everyone is very excited. That's normal. When I've raised money before, I've seen this happen. The team is excited. My job as an advisor, particularly, I have to take a step back and really tell them, guys, this is just the beginning. The hard part now, the hardest part now in many ways, is now take this and utilize the resources you have in a way that makes sense, that provides value, so people are willing to share with you. They're willing to buy your service, or they're willing to place advertisements, whatever, as the business model evolves. What you do next is in many ways much harder. And the team is kind of solemn about it. They kind of figured out that, hey, it's actually quite scary to succeed. And I've seen it before. It's not an unusual spot. It's responsibility. We call it's big responsibility. And as that responsibility kind of ratchets up over the next couple of weeks, these guys will, I'm sure, take a quick celebration. But they have a release coming in June. They have to deliver. So a team is very, very busy trying to do that. They want to deliver in June, not slip, have something available. We do need more partners. And I will be traveling I will be at CES Asia in a few weeks here, so a little plug for everybody. So Computer Electronics Show in Shanghai, was there last year, gonna be here again. It's great. Very excited to always be there and kind of watch the people taking risks, building new things, being excited about the technology in general. So I will be there. We'll try to get some customers, not customers, but partners. We'll probably look at some customers as well, but primarily partners on the OEM, as original equipment manufacturers, and ODM, or original device manufacturing side, when I'm there, because they'll all be there in Shanghai at the same time. So I will be there to take a look, but getting close to the hard cap and kind of how the team manages that psychologically, sometimes it's hard to succeed. And it's a big responsibility for them to do the right thing here and build the right technology in a short period of time. So I will be over them like a hawk, making sure they do it right, and it's an important thing going forward. They have a massive opportunity. Opportunity is not to raise ICO. The opportunity is build a multi-billion-dollar company and build a multi-billion-dollar ecosystem around this. that solves a big problem for people. So we excited about it. I'm hugely excited. I was excited when I heard the story initially and what these guys were trying to do. And as I mentioned, I generally have not advised other ICO startups. I certainly could. I could invest. World Wi-Fi told a story to me that I've heard before in a slightly different market in terms of sharing the frequency and sharing the existing infrastructure. Obviously, sharing economy has been huge over the last 3, 4, 5 years. We got a few massive companies out of it. We got Uber out of it. We got Airbnb out of it. Certainly, we have a few companies in China doing the same thing as well. Didi is doing great. Always excited about those guys. In terms of going forward, it's a big opportunity and a big. When you see that opportunity, you have the resources. You have no excuses anymore. Somebody believed in you, and now you have to go execute. And execution is hard. I think team here is great. But execution is how you win or lose going forward. They now have no excuses. They have the resources. They have a good idea. They have community behind them. The rest is just, hey, now go execute. Now go make this happen. All right. So we've been at this for about an hour. Do we have any more questions? Let's see. Let's see a few more. Let me see real quick. So we have a question about this illegal use. How would we prevent illegal usage? This one is actually very, I'll jump into it in a second. This one is interesting. And I hate to say this, but you always have to start. So what is illegal to you? What is illegal in some countries is perfectly fine in others. So that's a scalability challenge for us. We certainly need to abide by local laws and regulations. Generally, what we will always side with is we want to be as permissive as we possibly can. Why that is? Because I'm a big believer of the free flow of information. I'm a believer in privacy. I believe that actually what drives the growth of the digital economy. Now, you always have to kind of take into account local concerns, right? There's always security threats. There are piracy threats. Fortunately, most of the threats over the last 3, 4, 5 years have now started to be less about privacy and copyright and more about ownership. Security. And less about copyright and ownership and just overall country security. Some of it is self-serving, so it's always hard to kind of, in some countries, there's just a way to maintain control. We need to respect that still, and we will. But on the copyright side, the industry has done the right thing. It was always painful to me, especially in the US, when it was so much easier for me to download a torrent than to watch the same show online for money. That mostly got solved. It got solved around the world, so I'm not particularly concerned with that. Most people understand they need to pay for content. Most people understand the concept that not every country can pay exactly what we pay in America and the United States. So some dynamic pricing has to be involved. Netflix really has done a great job kind of dragging the industry in the right direction. YouTube has done an okay job. They're kind of trying to catch up. Things like Apple Music and Spotify kind of solve that for music. So I want to enable connectivity for people so they can use these great services. In some countries we wouldn't be able to, so we will work with local vendors to enable local vendors to provide those services. But when we get to the illegal use, we will generally avoid policing that network. We will abide by the laws and regulation of each country and economy and legal frameworks we have to abide by, especially as it concerns privacy of your connectivity. But we are not there to police you. And we will resist as much as we possibly legally can We're not police. We don't make enough money to police our network as well. We want to give you connectivity. There are other entities that have to police it, and they will. We will provide you protection from spamware, malware, and the basics. Most routers, by the way, nowadays provide you with that as well. It works okay. Most of the time it works fine. There are services like OpenDNS, part of a Cisco umbrella, that we can certainly partner with. But it's a slippery slope. I'm certainly been from US. I'm biased towards open networks and open internet access, but full realization it's not going to happen everywhere. In some places we will really be able to make frictionless connectivity simple and quick. In other places it may be more kind of more sophisticated. It will take more work. So I certainly, at this juncture, I certainly always want to educate the governments and the approaches, because all of them want their digital economies to grow. None of them walk in and say, hey, we don't want digital economy to grow. But a lot of them misunderstand what it takes. And sometimes they look at bad examples and follow them, and then it doesn't work. And sometimes they've been successful in spite of doing the wrong thing. So over time, these things tend to kind of clarify themselves, but I think we've almost got to the point where illegal, meaning really bad, we will stick to the existing laws, and we'll try to kind of give you the tools to police that. But the challenge there is for the team is, as we get into each new regulatory regime, which is a new country, typically, there will be some interesting things we have to do in software to make it work. So for whom is this, for whom is this project more useful? Certainly, I think one of the things I kind of clarified is that we're done looking for investors, right? The community and the project is more or less at the we're at the end tail of that. Now it's all about end users, right? So it's all about building these connected Wi-Fi networks. So that to us is the biggest thing. To us, we have to go do that going forward. We will see most of the marketing been switching over, and this is one of the reasons why I'm going to be at CES in Shanghai. We're really switching from looking for investors to looking for partners, looking for router manufacturers. In the context, obviously I know most of them from just prior work with them, but working with them to build good, secure routers that support world Wi-Fi out of the box. So you don't have to go install something. There's not going to be any pieces of software or firmware updates you have to do. You just get it and it works. That is what the team on behind the scenes has been focused on. There's a lot of work to make that happen. I believe they will. There's nothing technically that we don't know how to do. So it's all about just putting those things together. So going forward, I think end users are our priority. I think I went over kind of what countries we want to target and the use cases we see as getting the most traction. End users are our priority, but for our end users are not necessarily end users of that Wi-Fi. In the ideal world, the end user that joins the World Wi-Fi network wouldn't even know that it's powered by World Wi-Fi. It's so transparent to them, it's just internet. Right? They're able to walk into a particular location, it just joins it, and there's nothing special you have to do. The challenge is to make as little friction for that user as possible, right? So if they don't know, hey, it's powered by World Wi-Fi, that should be sufficient. That, by the way, and we can kind of slide back and kind of wrap up here with kind of conversation about Wi-Fi in general. I'll tell you a little story about how Wi-Fi was born. Why Wi-Fi? It is an IEEE standard called 802.11. And for many years, many years actually, it was known as 802.11. IEEE 802.11, and that's what everyone was using. And it was an IEEE standard. When I was at Lucent, we were sort of a reference implementation. But of course, people built their own. Other people, there was another company called Intersil that built their own Wi-Fi implementation, and they didn't always work. And the problem was with IEEE that, hey, there is no enforcement mechanism. If you support a piece of a standard or you have a bug, there is no way for anyone to enforce you interoperating with all other equipment. So Lucent owned Hi-Fi, which was high fidelity, which was in, if you're old enough, all the audio equipment was supporting this thing called Hi-Fi, which is high fidelity. Lucent owned the brand, copyright, and everything associated with the words Wi-Fi, wireless fidelity. Wi-Fi Alliance was born. And the Wi-Fi Alliance idea was we're a set of commercial companies that operate this brand, and you have to pass interoperability standards if you want to be able to use the brand Wi-Fi. Otherwise, you can certainly say you're IEEE 802.11 and then jumbo in terms of words and lawyerese, like we are 802.11 AC Wave 1 compliant. What does that mean? To a consumer, that means nothing. So Wi-Fi really kind of enforces that, hey, if you have a Wi-Fi logo on your device, everyone with Wi-Fi can connect. So we sort of want to make that happen, that everyone will just say, hey, if you have World Wi-Fi app on your device, just log in, it will just work. So that's the promise. There are a few companies who do a similar thing. Boingo is one of them. They try to connect millions of access points. And I've known Boingo since Lucent days, which is 15 years, more than 15 years. We built their first Boingo access points for them back at Lucent. And Boingo really went away from controlling customer experience into something that actually became, yeah, sure, Boingo access points in many places, mostly in Western world, developed countries, but the customer experience was horrendous. You have to go through multiple dialogues, you have to pay them money, you have to pay them money up front. It's a mess. Certainly not applicable to people who think internet and Facebook are the same thing. So where ease of use and something where it's frictionless is far more important than adhering to a particular standard. They don't care. They just want connectivity. So with World Wi-Fi, we need to kind of bridge that gap, right? We want to operate on top of Wi-Fi equipment, and we want to enable anyone to log in to those access points easily with as little friction as practically possible. And as we develop the technology, every step, the focus is as little, remove the friction in every single step. So that's mostly, I think we're wrapping up. I think I covered most of the questions. Thank you very much, guys. As I mentioned, we have big news. We're almost at the hard cap. It's practically over. 15,000 of you have contributed. That nothing makes me happier. It's not the number at the end. Certainly it's important to get the resource we have, but the fact that 15,000 people looked at the idea, looked at the use cases, and said, hey, I understand, I need this. And usually, by the way, these are the way these investments happen. People buy something they need. They see the need for it, so they say, hey, if I need it, there's got to be other people who need it too. And there are 15,000 of you who said that, over 15,000 to World Wi-Fi. That's very exciting. I very appreciate that. The team here is also extremely excited. They appreciate what you have done for us, and now it's our turn. We gotta focus on delivering the product and showing this to the world. Thank you very much, and good luck.